Okay, Sri Nrsimha Ki Jai.
Namastena Shingaya
Namaste.
Dala Daine
Hiranyakashi Purvakshaha Shilatangana Kalaye Iton Nrsimha Parato Nrsimha Yato Yamitato Nrsimha Pahir Nrsimha Ridaye Nrsimha Nrsimha Madim Sharanam Prapade Tavakara Kamala Vare Naka Prabhuta Sringa Dalita Hiranyakashipu Tanu Ringa Keshavadrita Narahari Rupa Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Jagadisha Hare Jaya Nrsimha Dev Nrsimha Dev Nrsimha Dev Jaya Nrsimha Dev Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prahlad Maharaj Jaya Prahlad Maharaj Prabhupada 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada
Jai Lord Shingadev Ki Jai Lord Maharaj Ki
Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai
Krishna
Krishna Krishna Krishna Krishna Krishna Krishna Hey Krishna 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 Hey Krishna Krishna
Krishna Krishna Krishna Krishna
Raksha Mam Krishna 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 Pahi Mam Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Rama Raghava Raksha Mam Krishna Kesava Krishna Kesava Krishna Kesava Pahi Mam.
Jai. So we're having a Krishna book reading, and it's Lord Balaram's touring the sacred places, and which is chapter 78.
Usually we end here, yeah?
Oh, good, good, good.
I think so.
He came to the forest. Yeah, after you read these.
Yeah,
we
good.
did. He came to the forest known as Dandakaranya. This is the same Dandakaranya forest where Lord Ramachandra lived while in exile. Lord Balaram next came to the bank of the river Narmada, the biggest river in central India.
Narmada, no? Narmada?
Yeah,
Narmada.
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 Yeah.
Narmada.
Narmada.
Yes.
Narmada, that's it. Known as Mahishmati Puri. After bathing there, according to the requisite principles, Lord Balaram returned to Prabhasastirtha, wherefrom he had begun his journey. When Lord Balaram returned to Prabhasastirtha, he heard from the Brahmins that most of the Satyas in the battle of Kurukshetra had been killed. Balaram felt relieved to hear that the burden of the world had been reduced. Lord Krishna and Balaram appeared on this earth to lessen the burden of military strength created by the ambitious Kshatriya kings. This is the way of materialistic life. Not being satisfied by the absolute necessities of life, people ambitiously create extra demands, and their illegal desires are checked by the laws of nature or by the laws of God, appearing as famine, war, pestilence, and other similar catastrophes.
Viruses.
Lord Balaram heard that although most of the Satyas had been killed, the Kurus were still engaged in fighting. Therefore, he returned to the battlefield just on the day Bhimasena and Duryodhana were engaged in a personal duel. A well-wisher of both of them, Lord Balaram wanted to stop them, but they would not stop. When Lord Balaram appeared on the scene, King Yudhisthira and his brothers Nakula and Sahadev, as well as Lord Krishna and Arjuna, immediately offered their respectful obeisances, but they did not speak at all. The reason they were silent was that Lord Balaram was somewhat affectionate towards Duryodhana, who had learned from Balaramji the art of fighting with a club. When the fighting was going on, King Yudhisthira and others thought that Balaram might have come there to say something in favour of Duryodhana, and they therefore remained silent. Both Duryodhana and Bhimasena were very enthusiastic in fighting with clubs, and in the midst of the large audiences, each very skillfully tried to strike one another. While attempting to do so, they appeared to be dancing, but nonetheless it was clear that both of them were very angry. Lord Balaram wanted to stop the fighting, and he said, "My dear King Duryodhana and Bhimasena, I know that both you are great fighters and are well known in the world as great heroes, but still I think that Bhimasena is superior to Duryodhana in
bodily strength. On the other hand, Duryodhana is superior in the art of fighting with a club. Taking this into consideration, my opinion is that neither of you is inferior to the other in fighting. Under the circumstances, there is very little chance that one of you will be defeated by the other. Therefore, I request you to not waste your time fighting in this way. I wish you to stop this unnecessary fight." The good instruction given by Lord Balaram to both Bhimasena and Duryodhana was intended for the equal benefit of both of them. But they were so enwrapped in anger against each other that they could remember only their long-lasting personal enmity. Each thought only of killing the other, and they did not give much importance to the instruction of Lord Balaram. Both of them then became like a madman in remembering the strong accusations and ill behavior that they had exchanged with one another. Lord Balaram, being able to understand the destiny awaiting them, was not eager to go further in the matter. Therefore, instead of staying, he decided to return to the city of Dwarka. When he returned to Dwarka, he was received with great jubilation by relatives and friends, headed by King Ugrasena and other elderly persons, who all came forward to welcome him. After this, he again went to the holy place of pilgrimage at Naimisharanya, and the sages, saintly persons and brahmanas all received him standing. They understood that Lord Balaram, although a Kshatriya, was now retired from the fighting business. The brahmanas and sages, who were always for peace and tranquility, were very pleased at this. All of them embraced Balaram with great affection and induced him to perform various kinds of sacrifices in that sacred spot of Naimisharanya. Actually, Lord Balaram had no business performing the sacrifices recommended for ordinary human beings. He is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and therefore he himself is the enjoyer of all such sacrifices. As such, his exemplary action in performing sacrifices was only to give a lesson to the common man who show how one should abide by the injunctions of the Vedas. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Balaram, instructed the sages and saintly persons at Naimisharanya on the subject matter of the living entities' relationship with this cosmic manifestation, on how one should accept this whole universe, and on how one should relate with the cosmos in order to achieve the highest goal of perfection. The understanding that the whole cosmic manifestation rests on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is also all-pervading, even within the minutest atom, by the function of his Paramatma feature. You see, you gotta get absorbed. Sorry.
Gotta get absorbed, that's good.
You should not be that absorbed.
Lord Balaram then took the Avavrita bath, which is accepted after finishing sacrificial performances. After taking his bath, he dressed himself in new silken garments and decorated himself with beautiful jewellery amidst his relatives and friends. He appeared to be like a shining full moon amidst the luminaries in the sky. Lord Balaram is the personality of Godhead and Anta himself, and therefore he was beyond the scope of understanding by mind, intelligence or body. He descended exactly like a human being and behaved in that way for his own purpose. We can only explain his activities as the Lord's pastimes. No one can even estimate the extent of the unlimited demonstrations of his pastimes because he is all-powerful. Lord Balaram is the original Vishnu. Therefore, anyone remembering these pastimes of Lord Balaram in the morning and evening will certainly become a great devotee of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and thus his life will be successful in all respects.
Jai Balaramji.
Jai. Oh, sorry. Thus ends the Bhaktivedanta purport of the 78th chapter of Krishna, the liberation of Balvala and Lord Balaram's touring the sacred places. Chapter 79, Meeting of Lord Krishna with Sudama Brahmana. King Parikshit was hearing the narration of the pastimes of Lord Krishna and Lord Balaram from Shukadeva Goswami. These pastimes are all transcendently pleasurable to hear, and Maha Parikshit addressed Shukadeva Goswami as follows: My dear Lord, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, is the bestower of both liberation and love of God simultaneously. Anyone who becomes a devotee of the Lord automatically attains liberation without having to make a separate attempt. Because the Lord is unlimited, his pastimes and activities for creating, maintaining and destroying the whole cosmic manifestation are also unlimited. I therefore wish to hear about his other pastimes, of which you may not have spoken as yet. My dear Master, the conditioned souls within this material world have been frustrated by searching out the pleasure of happiness derived from sense gratification. Such desires for material enjoyment are always piercing the hearts of conditioned souls. But I am actually experiencing how the transcendental topics of Lord Krishna's pastimes can relieve one from being affected by such material activities of sense gratification. I think that no intelligent person can reject this method of hearing the transcendental pastimes of the Lord again and again. Simply by hearing, one can remain always steeped in transcendental pleasure. Thus one will not be attracted by material sense gratification. Very important. So if we're attracted to material sense gratification, it means we're not hearing enough.
There's a point here.
Yes.
Valid point. In this statement, Maharaj Parikshit has used two important words, Vishanna and Visheshagya. Vishanna means morose. Materialistic people invent many ways and means to become fully satisfied, but actually they remain morose. The point may be raised that sometimes transcendentalists also remain morose. Parikshit Maharaj, however, has used the word Visheshagya. There are two kinds of transcendentalists, namely the impersonalists and the personalists. Visheshagya refers to the personalists who are interested in transcendental variegatedness. The devotees become jubilant by hearing the descriptions of the personal activities of the Supreme Lord, whereas the impersonalists, who are actually more attracted by the impersonal feature of the Lord, are only superficially attracted by the Lord's personal activities. As such, in spite of coming in contact with the pastimes of the Lord, the impersonalists do not fully realize the benefit to be derived, and thus, due to fruitive activity, they remain in exactly the same morose position as the materialists. King Parikshit continued, the ability to talk can be perfected only by describing the transcendental qualities of the Lord. The ability to work with one's hands can be successful only when one engages himself in the service of the Lord with those hands. Similarly, one's mind can be peaceful only when one simply thinks of Krishna in full Krishna consciousness. This does not mean that one has to be very thoughtful. One simply has to understand that Krishna, the absolute truth, is all-pervasive, by his localized aspect as Paramatma. If one only can think that Krishna, as Paramatma, is everywhere, even within the atom, then one can perfect the thinking, feeling, and willing functions of the mind. The perfect devotee does not see the material world as it appears to materialize, for he sees everywhere the presence of his worshipable Lord in his Paramatma feature. Maharaj Parikshit continued by saying that the functions of the ear can be perfected simply by engagement in hearing the transcendental activities of the Lord, and the function of the head can be fully utilized when the head is engaged in bowing down before the Lord and his representative. That the Lord is represented in everyone's heart is a fact, and therefore the highly advanced devotee offers his respects to every living entity, considering that the body is the temple of the Lord. But it is not possible for all men to come to that stage of life immediately, because that stage is for the first-class devotee. The second-class devotee can consider the Vaishnavas. You want to read?
The representative of Vaishnavas, or the devotees of the Lord, to be representatives of Krishna. And a devotee who is just beginning, the neophyte or third-class devotee, can bow his head before the deity in the temple and before the spiritual master, who is the direct manifestation of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Therefore, in the neophyte stage, in the intermediate stage, or in the fully advanced perfected stage, one can make the function of the head perfect by bowing down before the Lord or his representative. Similarly, one can perfect the function of the eyes by seeing the Lord and his representative. In this way, everyone can elevate the functions of the different parts of his body to the highest perfectional stage simply by engaging them in the service of the Lord or his representative. If one is able to do nothing more, he can simply bow down before the Lord and his representative and drink the Charnamrita, the water which has washed the lotus feet of the Lord or his devotee. On hearing these statements of Maharaj Parikshit, Shukadeva Goswami was overwhelmed with devotional ecstasy because of King Parikshit's advanced understanding of the Vaishnava philosophy. Shukadeva Goswami was already engaged in describing the activities of the Lord, and when asked by Maharaj Parikshit to describe them further, he continued with great pleasure to narrate Srimad Bhagavatam. There was a very nice Brahmana friend of Lord Krishna. As a perfect Brahmana, he was very elevated in transcendental knowledge, and because of his advanced knowledge, he was not at all attached to material enjoyment. Therefore, he was very peaceful and had achieved supreme control over his senses. This means that the Brahmana was a perfect devotee, because unless one is a perfect devotee, he cannot achieve the highest standard of knowledge. It is stated in the Bhagavad Gita that a person who has come to the perfection of knowledge surrenders unto the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In other words, any person who has surrendered his life for the service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead has come to the point of perfect knowledge. The result of perfect knowledge is that one becomes detached from the materialistic way of life. This detachment means complete control of the senses, which are always attracted by material enjoyment. The senses of the devotee become purified, and in that stage the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord. That is the complete field of devotional service.
Although the Brahmana friend of Lord Krishna was a householder, he was not busy accumulating wealth for very comfortable living. Therefore, he was satisfied by the income which automatically came to him, according to his destiny. This is a sign of perfect knowledge. A man in perfect knowledge knows that one cannot be happier than he is destined to be. In this material world, everyone is destined to suffer a certain amount of distress and enjoy a certain amount of happiness. The amount of happiness and distress is already predestined for every living entity. No one can increase or decrease the happiness of the materialistic way of life. The Brahmana therefore did not exert himself for more material happiness. Instead, he used his time for advancement of Krishna consciousness. Externally, he appeared very poor because he had no rich dress and could not provide a rich dress for his wife. Because their material condition was not very opulent, they were not even eating sufficiently, and thus both he and his wife appeared very thin. The wife was not anxious for her personal comfort, but she felt concerned for her husband, who was such a pious Brahmana. She trembled due to her weak health, and although she did not like to dictate to her husband, she spoke as follows. It's an interesting point. I did not like to dictate to her husband. My dear Lord, I know that Lord Krishna, the husband of the goddess of fortune, is your personal friend. You are also a devotee of Lord Krishna, and he is always ready to help his devotee. Even if you think that you are not rendering any devotional service to the Lord, still you are surrendered to him. And the Lord is the protector of the surrendered soul. Moreover, I know that Lord Krishna is the ideal personality of Vedic culture. He is always in favor of Brahminical culture and is very kind to the qualified Brahmanas. You are the most fortunate person because you have, as your friend, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Lord Krishna is the only shelter for personalities like you because you are fully surrendered unto him. You are saintly, learned, and fully in control of your senses. Under the circumstances, Lord Krishna is your only shelter. Please therefore go to him. I am sure that he will immediately understand your impoverished position. You are also a householder, and therefore without money you are in distress. But as soon as he understands your position, he will certainly give you sufficient riches so that you can live very comfortably. Lord Krishna is now the king of Bhoja, Vrishni, and Andaka dynasties. And I...
One page,
Yeah.
And I have heard that he never leaves his capital city Dwarka. He is living there without outside engagements. He is so kind and liberal that immediately gives everything, even his personal self, to any person who surrenders unto him. Since he is prepared to give himself personally to his devotee, there is nothing wonderful in giving some material riches. Of course, he does not give much material wealth to his devotee if the devotee is not very fixed. But I think that in your case, he knows perfectly well how much you are fixed in devotional service. Therefore, he will not hesitate to award you some material benefit for the bare necessities of life. In this way, the wife of the Brahmana again and again requested in great humility and submission that he go to Lord Krishna. The Brahmana thought that there was no need to ask any material benefit from Lord Sri Krishna, but he was induced by the repeated requests of his wife. Moreover, he thought, if I go there, I shall be able to see the Lord personally. That will be a great opportunity, even if I don't ask any material benefit from him. When he had decided to go to Krishna, he asked his wife if she had anything in the home that he could offer to Krishna, because he must take some presentation for his friend. The wife immediately collected 4 palmfuls of chipped rice from her neighboring friends and tied it into a small cloth, like a handkerchief, and gave it to her husband to present to Krishna. Without waiting any longer, the Brahmana took the presentation and proceeded toward Dwarka to see his lord. He was absorbed in thought of how he could be able to see Lord Krishna. He had no thought within his heart other than Krishna. It was, of course, very difficult to reach the palace of the kings of the Yadu dynasty, but Brahmanas were allowed to visit. When the Brahmana friend of Lord Krishna went there, he, along with other Brahmanas, had to pass through 3 military encampments. In each camp there were very big gates, and he also had to pass through them. After the gates and the camps, there were 16,000 big palaces, the residential quarters of the 16,000 queens of Lord Krishna. The Brahmana entered one palace which was very gorgeously decorated. When he entered this beautiful palace, he felt that he was swimming in the ocean of transcendental pleasure. He felt himself constantly diving and surfacing in the transcendental ocean. At that time, Lord Krishna was sitting on the bedstead of Queen Rukmini. Even from a considerable distance, he could see the Brahmana coming to his home. Hare
Hare Krishna.
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 Shri Shri Panchatattva ki
Jai.
jai.
Zoom.
No Zoom. Is there Zoom?
There we go, Zoom.